Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and I wanted to share this with you. This is from the Conservative Review, and it's an article Daniel Horowitz wrote back on January 4th, 2018. And I think it really kind of sheds light on things. And, the census question is not dead yet. They are looking at ways to kind of get around what the Supreme Court said to figure out a way to implement it. Because, in my opinion, there should not be any question about why they want to put it on there. I mean, I don't care about their motives. The only question that really should have been addressed by the Supreme Court was, is it a legitimate question? Motives have no bearing on this. What matters is it a legitimate question? And when you're doing a census, yes, that's what a census is for, to find out how many citizens you have. And especially with ours, because, it determines how the House of Representatives is going to be. So I wanted to share this with you because he does deal with this. And, I think he wrote a book called A Stolen Sovereignty. And sounds like a really good book that's on this topic. Anyway, he says, imagine a state simply saying it will not abide by federal tax laws, territorial integrity of national parks, or National Guard deployment orders from the president. Sounds like a banana republic, right? Well, what is playing out in California with sanctuary laws for illegal aliens is even worse because it violates the integrity of national sovereignty for all of us, allows illegal aliens to benefit from their illegal behavior, and makes the American citizen a stranger in his own land. Earlier this week, California Governor Jerry Brown signed a bill officially designating California as a sanctuary, declaring the entire state a non-cooperating jurisdiction with detainer requests from ICE. Yes, evidently private business owners in these blue states can be fined $135,000 for refusing to serve a gay event, but a state can just thumb its nose at federal immigration law and the courts side with the state. Now, this really does put things in perspective, because if they refuse to do one law and to follow that, what's going to stop them from other laws that they just don't feel like they want to support? They're federal laws. Federal laws are supposed to trump state laws. But that doesn't seem to be the case. And, when this first came out, I know this is an old topic, but a lot of the things that are going on now have been spoken of in the past and just have not been resolved. And like I said, this guy wrote this back in 2018, and yet this is really where we're at right now and something that needs to be remembered. So they're talking with how ICE is not going to be respected in California. But look at what this says. This is one case where crime most definitely pays. In the case of California, it already has an extra 5 seats in the House due to its illegal alien population. Remember, Obamacare only passed in the House by a 220-210 margin, meaning that illegal immigration directly affected the left's ability to take over health care. Interesting, huh? Immigration was given to the federal government to prevent states from gaming representation. This is exactly why our founders assigned control over immigration policy to the federal government. They didn't want states to artificially inflate their representation by flooding the entire federal union with undesirable aliens. Commenting on the power of Congress, as opposed to states, over immigration, the inimitable Justice Joseph Story explained, if aliens might be admitted indiscriminately to enjoy all the rights of citizens at the will of a single state, the Union might itself be endangered by an influx of foreigners hostile to its institutions, ignorant of its powers, and incapable of a due estimate of its privileges. While this was written in 1833, every word is speaking to liberals today in states like California that want to increase their representation at the expense of other states. Let's not forget that once an alien is admitted to the Union by one state, he is free to move around anywhere in the country. Thanks to California's sanctuary policies, a cop in Kansas was killed last year by an illegal set free by Los Angeles police who refused to hand over the criminal alien to ICE. Roger Sherman, among the greatest of all the founders, noted during the House debate on the Naturalization Act of 1790 that It was intended by the convention who framed the Constitution that Congress should have the power of naturalization in order to prevent particular states receiving citizens and forcing them upon others who would not have received them in any manner. Emphasis added. Sherman was emphatic that federal control was designed to guard against an improper mode of naturalization and prevent individual states from flooding the country with immigrants based on easier terms. James Madison, in a 1782 letter to Edmund Randolph, noted that a uniform rule of naturalization from a future federal government would cure the existing problem under the Confederation of the intrusion of obnoxious aliens through other states. Writing in Federalist number 42, Madison elaborates that the federalized power over naturalization solved a very serious embarrassment and defect of the Articles of Confederation, whereby certain descriptions of aliens who had rendered themselves obnoxious can force themselves on several states had they acquired the character of citizens under the laws of another state. Thus, Justice Scalia was right when he said that the naturalization power was given to Congress not to abrogate states' power to exclude those they did not want, but to vindicate it. And that was U.S. v. Arizona. Illegals should never have been counted in the census. It appears that the Trump administration is taking the first steps to cleaning up the mess with the census. The Justice Department requested that the Commerce Department, which oversees the Census Bureau, include a citizenship question in the upcoming decennial survey, as has always been included in the long-form survey until the Obama administration eliminated it. Putting aside the immigration debate for a moment, the DOJ needs to know the number of citizens in a given district when engaging in oversight of the Voting Rights Act and fair practices in redistricting. However, one would hope that identifying the disparity in districts between citizen voting age population and non-citizen population would expose the inherent unfairness of including non-citizens, particularly illegal aliens, in a census designed to affect the foundation of elections. In the long run, Congress would pass Warren Davidson's constitutional amendment, which would amend the 14th Constitution to ensure that only citizens are counted in the census. That's what one would hope. However, this particular amendment that they're talking about here, Warren Davidson's, here's Davison, and this was from June 22nd, 2017. He proposed this amendment called the Fair Representation Amendment. And it is a constitutional amendment, so that means it's got to have the 2/3 vote from both houses, and then it has to be ratified by 38 states. And look what he says here. American citizens give away a little more sovereignty with every census because we are not standing up for that, because there's widespread disregard of the rule of law with regard to immigration. The Fair Representation Amendment would restore fair representation to the states by ensuring each citizen's vote has equal value. People here illegally are represented by their home country embassies, not by Congress. Unfortunately, that is not currently how the electoral maps are drawn. Okay? So that was what he proposed. However, when I went to look at it, it appears to me that the only actions that happened on it says there were 4 actions, and you start at the bottom and go up. It was introduced, and then it was referred to the Committee on the Judiciary, and I don't know, this looks like the same thing here, and it's the same date. So it looks like one action to me, but I don't know. And then the Committee on the Judiciary, which was under Bob Goodlatte at the time, I believe, then they referred it to the Subcommittee on the Constitution and Civil Justice. But I see nothing after that, so I believe it died in committee, evidently. I don't know what happened to it. But anyway, so that's what that is. And no, we know that it wasn't ratified by the states and everything. So we know that amendment did not go through, and, it would have had to go to the states. So we know for sure that didn't happen. So anyway, but that would be a good solution if that would have been in there, because basically, it would have said, yeah, we proportion things according to whether people are citizens or not. And if they're not citizens, they don't count for that purpose. So that's the thing. And this guy's entire thing is about how we really are losing our sovereignty. And like I said, he wrote this book, Stolen Sovereignty. He's talking about how we lose our own sovereignty because we are allowing this whole illegal immigration thing to occur. So I thought he did a good job putting the rest of this down, and I'll leave the link down below so you can read it on your own. The rest of it, I think it's pretty interesting that he does some historical things here that point to it and say, you know what, this really should not be a question. And again, that's my stance, that why are we even bothering about asking, why do you want that question on there? That's not even a legitimate question about it. It's a census. The whole purpose of it should be to find out how many people are in this country, and you find out how many of them are citizens and how many aren't. That's the purpose of it. So I like the way he ends it up here. If illegal aliens can permanently distort our representation, debase our franchise, and dilute our political power, there is no sovereignty, Republican form of government, or self-respect as a nation state. If a state can be rewarded for disenfranchising the citizenry of this country and thumbing its nose at our sovereignty, then we have no nation at all. There is no issue of greater importance than restoring the franchise to where it rightly belongs with the citizens of these United States. So I thought he did a really good job. Like I said, I'll put the link down below so you can read the whole thing. Now, I also wanted to point out to you this article because Michelle Malkin, back on April 23rd, 2019, wrote this. Now remember, that was the day that the Supreme Court heard the oral arguments for this case about the citizenship question. So, yeah, and it was on there. You see, it was on there, and she connects it to Soros, and that most of the people that are standing against it, most of the organizations, are funded by Soros. So does that surprise anybody? No, not going to surprise you. So let me read these for you. Open borders activists, left-wing immigration lawyers, and identity politics radicals exploded on cue when they were talking about the citizenship question. Former Obama Attorney General Eric Holder decried the unconstitutional and irresponsible action to suppress the count in minority communities. You know, if you're a citizen, why would you be afraid to mark that? You know, I know some people who've been naturalized, and they are very proud that they're naturalized, and they're the first ones to want to mark that on a census. So if you are a citizen of this United States, why would you not want to put that? That's just the question that boggles my mind. And it doesn't matter if you are from a Hispanic background or whatever. You know, Mexican Americans, those are the ones I know, and they're happy to put that because they're very proud of becoming citizens. They worked really hard to do that. That's how most of them feel, that they are happy to say, yes, I'm a citizen. So the only people who are not going to want to mark that are going to be people who aren't citizens. And even that, if you have a green card, why would you fear marking that you had a green card? I know a guy with a green card. He doesn't mind. It doesn't bother him one little bit because he knows he's here legally. There's no problem. So the only people who are not going to want to answer that are going to be people who are here illegally. And those are the people we really don't want to count because they shouldn't count when we're trying to figure out how many representatives there are. Anyway, it goes on. The Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee fumed about the political stunt that unfairly targets immigrant communities throughout our country in an attempt to silence immigrants and benefit Republicans. I like this one. Histrionic social justice actress Alyssa Milano called it an attack on immigrant communities and our democracy itself. Oh, what a drama queen. Jorge Luis Vasquez Jr. of Latino Justice, funded by George Soros' Open Society Foundations, vented that a citizenship question would damage all our daily lives for decades. Oh, how awful it would be. Kristen Clark, president of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, another Soros-funded outfit, which sued over the citizenship question, blasted the scheme to hijack the 2020 census. Yeah, that's what we want to do. Really, honestly, do people not see through this? Oh, why can they not see this? The Soros-funded Asian Americans Advancing Justice lobbying group condemned Trump as racially and politically motivated. So they were pretty outraged. And then you go down here, and the thing about it is the census is used to divvy up seats in the House. You know, we know that. And look at this. So California added 6 seats it would not have had otherwise because of illegals. Texas, New York, and Florida each gained a seat. Indiana, Michigan, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin each lost a seat. Montana, Kentucky, and Utah each failed to secure a seat they would have otherwise have granted. That's because of illegals. So can you see how the power has been shifted from those of us in the heartland, you know, in the middle of the country, the flyover country as they call it, and it's been shifted to some of those other states. Now, I'm not saying Texas is going to be necessarily a bad thing, but they shouldn't be gaining seats because of illegals. Okay? I don't care who they are. And then people like us, we lose seats because of it. So that's just not fair. You know, our government is for the citizens. And here's from the previous article I read to you. Furthermore, Section 2 of the 14th Amendment was never intended to include those in the country who resided in another state, even American citizens who happened to be temporarily passing through a state during the time of the census. It wasn't intended to include legal temporary residents either. Conversely, it wasn't intended to exclude those permanent residents or citizens temporarily sojourning or vacationing in another country or state. As John Noonan, former Ninth Circuit judge, see, it wasn't always liberal, said in testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee in 1985, if there was an invading army on American soil, one does not suppose the Bureau of Census would count the enemy troops. And that's essentially what we have happening. We're counting the enemy troops. Yeah. So anyway, Michelle Malkin's article is really good, and if you want to read the whole thing, I will put a link to that down below because she really does go into, you know, the Soros connection here and how that's really being manipulated by these outside forces. But when it comes down to it, it's the idea of why can't we ask if they're citizens. I'm also going to include a link to this Gateway Pundit article down below, because it does have photos to show you that, yeah, you know what? It used to be on there, and Obama was the person who had it deleted off because he wanted to help out the Democrats. So, yep, it wasn't that long ago that the U.S. Census asked about citizenship. I think, yeah, from the 2000 census, it had a citizenship question. So the idea that they are complaining about this is so bogus. And that's what frustrates me about the Supreme Court, that it didn't matter why, because it's a legitimate question to ask on a census. So anyway, that's what I've got for you tonight on this. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you all later.